Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Turnup. Thank you, as always, for joining. We are the 150. That is our new club name. That's what we're all about because we are getting 150 views per episode. So just thank you for everyone for watching, subscribing, listening. We appreciate it so freaking much. And so you're probably watching the news. You're probably looking at TikTok, Instagram, whatever. And you're like, wow, this world is crazy. And it is. But that means business is good for us. Maybe not the rest of the world. And there is absolutely no shortage of events, entertainment, and definitely not uncertainty in the world. And so, where do we really begin? And we've been wanting to talk a lot. I think we did a few episodes ago, and it's been all over the news about Trump wanting to dismantle the Department of Education. There's also the war of words with France as EU continues to be very upset with how the U.S. is handling things with Russia and the Ukrainian war. And then you have Trump just defying judges on deportation, and then the judges stepping up and saying, like, hey, Trump, you can't do this. And he's like, watch me. And finally, we want to wrap up this episode with two different topics. One, deporting students on green cards and visas. Like, is that right? Because they disagree or saying things that are anti-American. And then we got a special guest coming in today too, BG, and he's going to hop into the Fed report, which we're super excited about. So first off, CK, are you ready to dive into this crazy week?
I'm ready. You said there's no shortage of events, entertainment, uncertainty in this world. Bronny James just scored 17 points in an NBA game, so anything is possible.
Dude, I actually got into a massive argument with a guy at work today about nepotism and Bronny James. I'm a LeBron James fan. Don't hate me for it, but like, dude, it's a wild
I hate
world.
you a little for it.
I know you do. And BG, so excited to have you back, man. Thanks for joining us again.
Hey, thanks again, MR, CK. Really excited to be back. Avid listener. There's just so much going on right now, and it's in the middle of March Madness too. So we'll see how things pan out in the next couple of days.
Is your bracket busted yet? Go
That's a great
UConn.
question.
All right, so let's jump right into it. So President Donald Trump has stated he wants to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education. He had a big thing, had children in the background in like a news press conference the other day, and it's basically arguing that the education policy should be handled at the state and local levels rather than the federal government. He has claimed that the department promotes policies he considers politically biased and inefficient. Critics of the proposal argue that eliminating the department could negatively impact federal funding for schools, particularly in underserved areas, and remove national oversight on key issues like civil rights protections and special education programs. Supporters of the idea believe it would reduce bureaucracy and give more control to parents and local government over educational decisions. While no president has successfully abolished the Department of Education, which was created in 1979, past Republican administrations have proposed reducing its role or restructuring its function. So, CK, I want to hand this one over to you. So why now? Why is he trying to get rid of the Department of Education now? Is this a Doge thing, or is he just really seeing this as inefficient? Hey, American test scores have not gotten better since this department has been created. Tuition has gone through the roof. Why now? Why the Department of Education?
Yeah, it's not just now. We mentioned this maybe 5 podcasts ago when he picked Linda McMahon as the head of DOE. He told her instruction was your job is to terminate your position. So long-term goal, I'm pretty sure is a campaign promise for Trump. But why it's at about 158 billion as a budget or in spending as a department, and it's best case it's a redundancy. All of the states run their own education. You could say it provides good things oversight. I say maybe standardization is a good thing, standardization of tests and education programs, but you don't need 158 billion to do that. And other things it provides, college loans. So college loans were guaranteed for anyone at 1980, and that's exactly when tuition started to skyrocket. It's going up 5 times faster than inflation.
That's crazy. And so I'm happy you brought that up too, because I was reading the same things as well. And so the other thing I read too is that, hey, since the Department of Education has been created, it actually hasn't improved our education. Americans are made fun of pretty globally as being like average in math. Like, I don't even know if we're like top 30 or 50 in the world. And, we are the leader in the world in the economy and creating businesses and all this other things. But like in actual education, we're not at the top. So do you actually think that the system is truly broken, like American educational system's broken, and like we just need to destroy the Department of Education, push it off to the states, and give them funded on an as need basis? Or do you think like, hey, the Department of Education can be good, it just needs to be fixed, and we need to redirect its efforts in order to better serve the American people?
I I don't know. Could it be good? Yeah, probably. But again, right now we're spending 150 billion, and you can say our test scores aren't bad, but they're not getting better. So that money isn't improving anything. Because what's the end goal? It's a good education system. It's good test scores, and we're not getting that. So all of the other stuff is just extra, and we're spending 150 billion dollars for nothing of our primary goal and a little bit of just extra. I don't know, BG. What do you think?
I I think it's a tough balance, right? We're trying to balance the fact that there are a multitude of people in this country that cannot afford, to your point, cannot afford the education, given that the tuition rates in the country are absolutely skyrocketing. In terms of economic measurements per se, the closest thing that we have to try to measure something like this is called the HDI, the Human Development Index, which tries to take into account healthy life, longevity of life, knowledge, and then standards of living, those types of things. It's not a great indicator, but all things considered, the U.S. is still within the top 15 globally. So in the context of the Department of Education, it's like you said, right? It's a twofold. There are pluses and minuses to each perspective of it, right? In some capacities, potentially tuition will probably decrease for certain institutions. Maybe that's not the case overall, just given the demand for higher education today. But all of that kind of factors back into economic, total factors of productivity, which we can get into later as well. But all of that kind of lends itself to how we continue to develop as a nation and then globally as a society of humans.
No, I like that. I like that a lot. And so when I was researching like what the Department of Education actually does, and I started asking people, and no one actually really knew what it does. It's like, what, Americans are so average at education, we probably shouldn't get rid of the institution that does that. And it's like, oh, what does it actually do? And so really what it looks like, it has to do with funding, like we just discussed. It has to do with civil rights, which we just discussed. And it doesn't actually accredit colleges. It just like oversees the process for accreditation for like colleges. It doesn't affect homeschooling at all. And some people say homes, like unless you're in the really backwoods, homeschooling is actually much more effective. You can learn way much more information in a much shorter time than actual public schools. And it also doesn't affect private schools either, hence, why they're private. And we all kind of associate private schools being better than public schools anyway. So it's like, all right, is it just because, the wealthy are putting their kids in better schools, or is it that the Department of Education isn't really helping? And so what I want to ask next before we transition to our next topic is, what can we expect next? Do you think this is really going to get dissolved during the Trump administration? Does Trump have the power? Does he have to go through Congress, the Senate? Like, what does that process look like? How realistic of this is of happening?
I think he's going to do it, and then the court's going to block it, and then eventually the Supreme Court will hear what they do with that. I don't know. I think technically to remove a federal department, Congress has to vote and pass it, and I think they need 2/3. So that's
Oh,
never
wow.
going to happen, at least in this current Congress. But what also we're seeing this becoming more and more of a Republican Party issue. Vivek is running for governor of Ohio, and he says if he wins, his plan is to make all teachers' salary and teacher positions merit based.
Okay.
So he wants to revamp all of the Ohio department, the state education, to make teachers completely merit based. There's no tenure. There's no other things. If your students get good test scores, you get more money. And trying to make it more like a business approach to it.
More competitive to incentivize teachers to doing a better job teaching or caring and so on. No, all right, that's good stuff. All right, we got a lot of topics. So let's jump into the next one. And so right now, tensions with France are probably at like an all-time high in recent memory. And so, French politician, I'm not even try and say his last name. His first name is, I think, like Raphael, was has called for the United States to return the Statue of Liberty to France. Yes, people, if you haven't already seen that on the news, TikTok, Instagram, he actually said that, arguing that the U.S. no longer upholds the values that the statue represents. The White House firmly rejected this request, emphasizing France's historic debt to America and basically saying, like, if it wasn't for us, you'd be speaking German right now. On top of that, a French scientist was denied entry into the United States after immigration officials discovered messages on his phone criticizing President Donald Trump's policies. The scientist was traveling to a conference near Houston when his electronic device was searched, leading to his expulsion from the U.S. France's Minister of Higher Education and Research, Philippe, expressed concern over the decision, emphasizing the importance of freedom of opinion and academic freedom in general. So, CK, I'm just going to open it up before I even ask a question. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so for that French scientist, I'm getting conflicting reports. What I've seen is that, I've obviously seen that the left is running with, oh, he criticized Trump, so they're getting rid of him. But what I've also seen is that he took confidential information on his electronic device from Los Alamos National Laboratory, and he pretty much broke a non-disclosure agreement, taking information from that lab that he shouldn't have taken. He admitted to taking it without permission. He attempted to conceal it.
Really?
Yeah. So if that's the case, like, obviously that's, I think, warranted to say, okay, you get out of this country if you're taking from a federal, like, national lab. But on the other hand, if the truth is he criticized Trump, that's tyranny. Where's the truth? I don't know if we'll ever know, because the media these days just likes to run with points, and no one ever kind of
Yeah,
backs down.
I think that's super fair, and I like the fact that you called it out. Call a spade, right, Tierney? If you just start arresting or detaining people because they openly criticize you, that's terrifying. That's like KGB status. That's like SS status in Nazi Germany. Like, that's North Korea. Like, you can't have that. But to your other point, like, hey, if the news, if the liberal side of the news is saying, like, hey, he's just detaining people, like, just because they criticize him, and then it turns out, like, no, this dude actually broke the law, that's a terrifying precedent set by the media, which they already do anyways. Is just like,
Yeah,
hey man, we're just gonna lie and run with a story to get you to think one way. The truth actually doesn't matter. And what is it,
that
a reminder
precedent has been set.
I know, right? And isn't that Trump's entire pitch, that the media is just out to get him? I don't know, man. It's you got to double check. Like, hey, if you're listening right now, double check everything we say. Don't just ever take one piece of information. Always fact check it or compare it to multiple sources. You never know who's telling the truth, whether it's on purpose or not. All right, so I want to ask this question because I think this is super important. So when we look at Europe right now, and BG, I definitely want your opinion on this as well. When we look at Europe right
Sure.
now, we know everything going on with Ukraine and France, or Ukraine and Russia, and we know that the United States' ties with Ukraine is falling, and France is trying to basically step up and be that European leader. Germany's not as powerful now than it was a few years ago. And if you remember, Macron, the French president, yeah, he's the president, right? Yeah. He went to Russia and tried to negotiate with Putin to basically say, hey, don't invade Ukraine. Like, we're good. We can work it out. Like, we can be better friends, like, whatever. And Macron came back and basically said to the EU, to the world, like, hey, I just made peace with Russia. They're not going to do anything. We're great. He basically pulled a Neville Chamberlain in like 1938, when he went to Hitler and he talked to him, but like, hey, you can't invade anymore. It was just like an abject failure. And now France is like, hey, we want to be leaders, but we don't have that power, not economically, not military. It's just like, hey, we were once a powerful nation that hasn't been powerful in like 80 years. And so, do they actually have a right to be mad at the United States for not supporting Ukraine the way that they want? And this opens it up to all to Europe. Do they have a valid point, basically saying you have to defend our border for us because we can't? So, BG, I'll let you go first, and let's kick it over to CK.
Yeah, MR, great perspective, providing the background. I will go ahead and quote something that's famous in Europe, given kind of the stuff I was looking at with respect to Rand Corporation and Macron. The famous saying in France is, in France, we don't have oil, but we have good ideas. So in the context of of providing per se for the rest of the continent, I would argue that no, they're not in a position to do that to the effect that you're kind of alluding to. Do I think it's crazy that we've had this perspective with them asking for the Statue of Liberty back, specifically with one specific politician? Yes, I think that's absolutely asinine, given the relationships that we've had for so many years. Because without France, the United States wouldn't exist as a nation today. But I think Macron will continue to try to seize any leadership opportunity he can, regardless of what the proposal is. To your point about what he was trying to convey with respect to Russia and the Ukrainian war. So I think that'll continue into the future. And I'll turn it over to CK.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, if the UK, if the United States is becoming America first and more isolationist, which I don't think we are, but I think people are seeing a power vacuum and trying to step in. But you need to have power to fill a power vacuum.
Yes.
And if
Yeah,
you
definitely.
don't have an army, you have no, like, you can't negotiate. You can't do anything from any position of power because what is your threat? Please? Are you going to wag your finger? Say, don't do it or else?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
all you can do.
This is the
And that's what,
Napoleonic era. Yeah.
yeah, well, Napoleon had an army. That's why he
Yeah.
could do it,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, again, that's the same thing in World War II. If you just wag your finger at Hitler or whoever else it may be, you better be able to back it up with something when he crosses that line. And it's more important that they think you'll back it up. And that's why I think Trump is an effective negotiator on the world stage because they think he'll go through with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and people second guess if he tells them don't do it. You can say like he's crazy and he's getting us into wars, but I think he's stopped a lot of wars just from people believing that he'll go through with it.
Yeah, I think Trump, in a debate or on stage in front of a large audience, was literally talking about how he was negotiating with either North Korea or Russia and threatened nuclear weapons. And he's like, they probably don't think, but there's like a 5% chance that they think I'm crazy enough to actually launch nukes at them. And they're right. And I was like, oh shit, man, like we can't mess with this guy. Like he's crazy enough to follow through with it. But no, I think that brings up a good point. Like when we look at Europe, when we look at their influence, they only have words. They don't have the economic, the military means to back it up. And so I think that's why they're put in a tough position and they're almost lowering themselves to Trump's level of just basically saying like kind of bullshit things like, oh, we're going to take our Statue of Liberty back. Like, no, you're not. Like, chill. Like, one, why would you? So no, I appreciate your guys' insights. All right, let's pivot because we got 3 more topics we got to hit. And I think they're really, really important. So, in recent weeks, the Trump administration has intensified efforts to deport international students involved in pro Palestinian protests, particularly those perceived as supporting Hamas, designated by the United States as a terrorist organization. This crackdown has sparked significant legal and civil rights debates. Mohammed Khalil, a Palestinian activist and recent Columbia University graduate, Khalil was arrested by the United States Immigration and Custom Enforcement ICE agents on March 8th this year. Despite holding a green card, authorities are attempting to revoke his permanent resident status, alleging his involvement in pro Hamas activities during campus protests. Khalil disputed these claims, asserting his detention is due to his political beliefs. Well, obviously, if you're supporting Hamas, like it's a political belief. So, CK, what should we think here? Can green card holders be detained because President Trump doesn't like what they're saying? Like, when does free speech come into here? Or is it like, hey, you're not an actual citizen and you are literally supporting a terrorist organization? Like, that's not okay, especially on our institutions. I think, honestly, I think this is a really, really fascinating debate and it can go either way, but I'm excited to hear your thoughts. And then BJ, just like take the opposite opinion of CK.
Yeah, Amar. I think the real question is I don't think it's a free speech issue. It might be, but this is again, what is the left running with versus what is the right running with? Because the Trump administration will say he's doing more than just supporting protests, which is a First Amendment right.
Yeah.
He is coordinating violent protest and probably getting funded by Hamas because all of these protests, if you look at them, there's clear signs that they're coordinated and they're funded and the protesters are being paid. And so you're seeing like a lot of these where pallets of bricks just happen to show up at the start of the protest, and So the argument is that he's on video saying jihad and death to America, threatening violence and death, and calling for the death of Americans and Israel's. But also, they're saying that he is leading and coordinating and specifically planning for these protests to get violent, which isn't a First Amendment right. So if that's true, then yes, he is active, pretty much an extension of Hamas. He is a terrorist if he's spreading violence in the name of Hamas on American soil. That makes him a terrorist.
Interesting. BJ, you got a counter argument to that?
I mean, from your perspective, I understand the freedom of speech argument, right? I think there is a line between people expressing who they want to support and what's going on with respect to the anti-Israeli movement, given how the war has kind of been completed, or how it's kind of taken its toll or course, or whatever you want to call it. I think both sides are to blame per se. In the context of people being here, I think the United States has every right to be able to CK's point, every right to deny people. If you're
Yeah.
pursuing a visa and you want to be in this country, expressing ideologies, but you're really here for education, but you're going to express these ideologies and try to turn things into violent protests, you've no reason to be here, right? We don't need more of that in the United States. We already have significant violent problems. Yeah, to his point, I agree to an extent. There is a line, but there is also an understanding with which to say, okay, you're definitely crossing the line, because not only are you expressing your understanding of what's occurring, you're now inciting others to take action that is not exactly peaceful protest, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I think those are fair points. The way I look at it, I look at it really twofold. One is in the 1960s, a really famous interview of the Soviet Union, one of their politicians speaking is like, "Hey, the best way to defeat America is to get into their school systems. It's to brainwash them. It's to make them hate their own country. It's to make them hate capitalism, and we'll win by." Educating hatred for America through our education system. And I think when you look at some of our top schools in our country, they lean super, super left, more left than what you want. Like I believe in balance more than anything possible you need in a country. You need a left and right side, and you need balance. But anytime you go too far to the right or too far to the left and you become an extremist, that's not okay. And it really seems that seems what we're seeing here. Like when you look at universities like Columbia specifically, and we know the protests have been active for well over a year, it really seems that, hey, they have gone too far. And I say that in the same breath. It's like, I respect the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of protest. Like a lot of those protesters in Columbia were just on the lawn. And then they got into camping. It's like, were they violent? No. Was it annoying to people that went to school there? Obviously, yes. But as long as they're not like actively, hating, like threatening violence or doing anything, like at the end of the day, even though I may not personally agree with it, I'm okay with it because they're protected under the First Amendment. And so, CK, if what you're saying is true, like, hey, this dude has said all these things. I didn't see that video personally. And then they are taking violent action, then yeah, you can't have it. And you at the end of the day, you want people in America that support America, especially if you're bringing in foreigners. You want them to like the country they're coming to and receiving this education from. Like that just makes sense. But I will push back. I don't think Hamas is actually funding him because I don't think they have the money or the means to get him money. But maybe Iran or someone else is somehow getting him the money to. Maybe it's the Russians to build issues in the United States.
Yeah, and I'll also play my own devil's advocate. I mean, I've said this before, the three biggest propaganda machines in the world are Russia, America, and Israel. And it's not a mystery that like APAC is funding pretty much every congressman, funded President Trump, funded Biden, you know, owns our politicians. So when we take these very pro-Israel stances and deport these people and say, oh, they were being supported by Hamas, well, who's giving us that intelligence? Is it Israel? Are we just eating, taking their propaganda and hook, line, and sinker and running with it and supporting them without guessing? Because it seems like we are.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think that's a fair point. All right, Terms, we got 2 topics left, and I think we've saved the best for last. So this next one, tensions have escalated, no shocker there, between the Trump administration and, oh, guess what? The judges over the deportation. I know, right? Like, shocker.
Wait, didn't you do an episode on this? Okay,
Yeah,
I just want to make
guys,
sure.
did we not just talk about this a few weeks ago? It's
Yeah,
almost
yeah, I
like
feel like you
everything's coming
guys
full
definitely
circle.
did. Yeah. A great episode. If you guys haven't listened to it, definitely listen to the judges episode for sure.
Yes, please listen to every episode. Woohoo! And the deportation of an alleged Venezuelan gang member. The administration invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which is normally used during wartime, and this is to expedite the deportation, marking an unprecedented application of the law in peacetime. On March 15th, 2025, U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, I'm so bad at last names, so don't hate me for it, issued a temporary restraining order halting the deportation and questioning the administration's legal justification. Despite this order, the administration proceeded with deportation flights to El Salvador, arguing that the judge's verbal directives lacked enforceability and that the flights were beyond U.S. jurisdiction when the order was issued. The judge has demanded an explanation from the administration's actions, indicating potential consequences if the court's orders were violated. The administration maintains that it did not defy the court, asserting that the judge is overstepping his authority. So the first question I have, BG, like you just said, a few weeks ago, we discussed judges and we discussed them possibly being corrupt, possibly being bought out, or at least put in that positions by Democrats and Republicans alike. I don't think this is a
Sure.
one-party thing. I think it's,
Nope.
as CK discussed, right? CK,
Yeah.
definitely 2 parties. It's not one way here.
Stack the benches is what's happening. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that to some extent the system is broken. And so is it broken here? In this instance, did the judge overstep? Do they have the authority? Should we be concerned that the only people that can stop Trump isn't Congress, isn't the Senate, isn't the Democrats? It is the judges, and testing that executive versus legislative branch probably at this level, the most intense level, I don't know, in the entire existence of our country, at least probably since World War II, when we created a bunch of things for in the name of national security. So did this judge overstep, or is he doing the right thing here?
Candidly, I don't know enough, right? I don't know the specifics of the law that the Trump administration used to go ahead and start deporting the cartel members from the country. I don't know with respect to timing what that actually looked like, because both sides of the aisle are saying different things, right? The administration's saying one thing, judges are saying another. Um, to what extent did that actually occur? Is it in the best interest of the country? I don't know. I don't know what the rap sheet of these people is going outside of the country. So maybe it is in the best interest of the national security of the nation. Maybe it's not, right? Maybe we're now giving law enforcement the ability to overstep their bounds entirely. Maybe this judge has totally overstepped his confines within the constitutional limits of power. So it remains to be seen. I think that's why you have Trump now asking the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, to step in and try to identify what the resolution is going to look like.
I like it, CK.
Yeah, but there's 500, close to 500, 235 from Joe Biden and 239 from Barack Obama. So close to 500 federal judges appointed by Biden and Obama. It seems to be the Democrat playbook right now. They're rolling over in Congress, everything else. But when it comes, everything has been blocked. 10 so far have gone up to federal judge review. So far, 6 are blocked. 6 executive orders are blocked. 4 are ongoing, probably going to get blocked. I imagine the Department of Education ending will get blocked. Everything is getting blocked. Transgender people serving in the military has been blocked. Ending birthright citizenship, making it easier to fire federal employees, like all of it. And so you have 500 judges, and then you go to the appeals court. The federal circuit of the appeals court is 8 Democrats to 4 Republicans by appointee. And then you have a Supreme Court who can review one case at a time. So I have 500 judges that can work to dismantle everything Trump's doing. And then I have an appeals process that more than not goes to the Democrats because it's 2-1 Democrat to Republican by appointee. And then I have a Supreme Court. So that's by the time it gets to the Supreme Court, I mean, that's like a year because you can stall in court, you can all of the appeals process, and that's one case. So you can say like we can trust the process, let the judges do their work, but it sure smells like they're colluding to dismantle everything Trump's doing. And they know that even though Trump has the Supreme Court as six appointees to three, there's only so much the Supreme Court can do. They can review one case at a time, like 1 year at a time.
Interesting. No, I think that's some really good insight. And when I look at this and everything you said too, right? First off, let me come out and say I am a huge believer and supporter of the three branches of government and how they all balance each other so no one gets too much power. I think that's how we've been a successful country for as long as we have been. But I think when you have things that are just so obvious, like, hey, you have a criminal in your country that you were trying to get rid of, and you made this deal with Venezuela, no, sorry, with El Salvador to basically be like, hey, especially if he's not a U.S. citizen, right? From what I'm reading, he's a Venezuelan citizen that was able to come into the country as a gang member. If that is true, you're removing a non-U.S. citizen and putting him in a prison in a different country. Now, I understand there's some legal red tape there, but if El Salvador is fine with it, I don't see why the judges would intervene other than, especially when you're trying to get rid of bad people. And that's kind of where I questioned uh like their commitment to, I don't know, is it doing the right thing? Like, we're trying to get rid of bad people, like, why are you interfering in that? Like, why are you using, your political capital on that? But CK, maybe your point is they can block literally everything he does, and Trump's going to be out of office before it even reaches the Supreme Court. So there's like, honestly, F Trump, we hate him. He's the next Hitler, or he is Hitler. Like, we'll do whatever we can to stop him. And F the three branches. We have all the power now for just whatever. So
Yeah,
I don't know, man.
let,
I think it's super interesting.
let me do you one further. I'm gonna put on my
Go for it.
tinfoil hat just for a
Ooh,
second.
we love the tinfoil hat.
Yeah, I'll try to tone it down, but why why all of a sudden in the last 5 years has the Democratic Party of the United States, has the UK, has France, has all of these Western European liberal parties, has Canada, all been so fixated on mass migration into their countries and fighting tooth and nail at the same time against it, even when there's clear problems, even when you have cartels and murderers and every single one they're trying to stop, like anyone trying to stop it, they fight tooth and nail. Why is that the hill everyone's dying on all at the same time?
I don't know. What's the tinfoil hat say?
The tinfoil hat says it's coordinated. There's some sort of somebody or secret meetings happening where they're saying this is going to serve some end purpose.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's super fair point. Like, right? Isn't that why the UK left the EU in, like, what was it, 2014, if my memory serves right? Because they didn't want to take on all these migrants, all these immigrants. Isn't that the issues going on in Germany right now? Isn't that why Poland's becoming a leader in Europe? Because they're like, hey, there's zero immigrants coming to Poland. So it's, dude, I don't know why people die on this hill. Well, I mean, I kind of do, right? You want to be a humanitarian, you want to help people out, you want to be a good moral person.
There's a
Um,
lot of hills though, and why is this the number one issue of every liberal party? And like while we're watching
think there's
significant
like a
declines
liberal
in their
party meetup in
country,
like Chicago annually, and like, hey guys, what's the topic of the year?
I I think there's
There
other
is. It's
things
called the
to it.
DNC.
I mean, there's obvious reasons for it, right? You can make these people citizens and they're Democrats for life, right?
Yeah,
Ronald Reagan, he granted amnesty for a bunch
yeah,
of
yeah,
illegals, and California never went red again. They
yeah.
were
But
blue before that, and they never went red again.
here's the thing: there's always going to be multiple parties. So even within the Democratic Party, let's say like, hey, you bring in so many people, the Republican conservatism literally cannot exist in America. Well, then the Democratic Party is going to split into two, and one's going to be more left than the other. Like, there's always going to be a yin to a yang. There can never just be one unless you're actually in a dictatorship, like, I don't know, China, Russia, right? So there's always going to be some splintering, and it's like they're just drinking poison, and I guess you're just going to die first, and they're going to die a few hours later, you know? But let me ask this question real quick. If Trump defies the judges, if he says, hey, guys, you are not going to block every single thing I do, not happening. I am the president. You're some lowly judge that got bought out. And, Trump will just go on and call it fake news. And he'll just say you're bought out and it's corrupt. And half the country will believe him, whether it's true or not. Um, what can the judges actually do? Can they impeach him? Or like who has the power here? Who has the upper hand? Is this
Yeah,
all unknown? Like we're just
yeah,
gonna
yeah. It is on at
F
this
around
point.
and
Yeah,
find out?
yeah.
I
This is
would,
a yeah. I would say it's unprecedented, CK.
yeah, I guess impeachment is the way to work against that, and he's not going to get impeached by this Congress.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. Yeah, maybe we're in like unprecedented territory, things we've never seen right now. I don't know. I think it's super interesting, but to the point, I think there's a level of Trump is still immune because so many people still love him and will literally like revolt to a large extent if they try to screw him over in a way that the vast majority of people, I mean, right, Capitol or January 6th protests, right? If they feel like, hey, this is truly is illegal and corrupt, I guarantee there's tens, 20 million people in the country that will not stand for that at all. So I think it still gives Trump a lot of power. All right. Any final comments before we turn it over to the Fed report on
Yeah,
this?
I just want to say, I think what is becoming more clear is that even if Trump works as fast as he's been working for 4 years, to get what he wants, which is kind of a disestablishment of the current system, it's going to take more. The Republicans are going to need to win like 2028, 2032 to really see like the end goal of what they're hoping for.
Yeah, I think that's a super fair point. All right, BG, the last major topic of the day. Bring it home with the Fed report.
Certainly. So in the last couple weeks, we've had a couple different reports come out, whether from the Bureau of Labor Statistics or the Fed Open Market Committee. So I'll go through those. Prior to me going through those directly, I'd like to address my background, since I received some flack last time as potentially being an Enron employee.
Nice.
No, I do not work for Enron. I do hold a bachelor's of science in economics, and I'm currently working through my master's. I've worked in credit risk management and commercial lending for JP Morgan, which definitely means I can talk about debt and debt instruments. I've worked for a venture capital firm. I'm a banker by trade. So, no, I don't hold a PhD in economics, and I'm not an academic or researcher. I'm actively involved in the financial sector, and I have worked with the Federal Reserve.
Drop that mic. Drop that
Dropping the
mic.
mic. Full disclosure, I'm not a CFA, which is Chartered Financial Analyst. I'm not a CFP. I'm not a financial advisor. So consult with your financial advisor before making investment related decisions. I'm not a genie, and I cannot tell you with certainty what's going to happen in the next couple of days, years, months, etc., and what direction the markets are definitively headed. Now that we clear there, let's discuss economics and market sentiment. So Steve Leisman, the senior economics reporter for CNBC, is pretty upset about the tariffs, and I'll get a little bit into that in a little bit. Let's talk macroeconomic indicators for inflation prices. March 12th, Bureau of Labor Statistics reported February inflation rate eased to 2.8%, which is lower than what economists had estimated at 2.9% with the February CPI report. Good thing. With core CPI coming in at 3.1%, which is lower than 3.2%, which was expected. Month over month at 0.2%. A lot of this inflation data does not incorporate what is to come and what has already happened with respect to tariffs. So it remains to be seen what's going to occur with that, and I'll get into that with the FOMC report here in a moment, and that's the Federal Open Market Committee. Central bank policymakers are generally consider tariffs to have modest impacts on inflation and are viewed as one-off measures that don't have lasting impacts on long-term gauges. So again, remains to be seen. However, a broader trade war could change that if the pace of the trade war increases and becomes more ingrained in the economy writ large across all industries. So markets currently expect the Fed to resume cutting interest rates summer and then with reductions around the end of 2025. Generally speaking, economic growth is trending negative in the first quarter, according to the Atlanta Fed's GDP Now tracker of incoming data. However, I will caution that the Atlanta Fed's GDP Now tracker is solely based on metric data as it becomes available. It does not allow for any sort of qualitative easement as opposed to just using the quantitative data, right? So what that means is none of the people that work at the Atlanta Fed are able to fine tweak any sort of their model with respect to their incoming data. And that's generally where we're at with respect to that. Now, let's move to the FOMC real fast. Recent indicators suggest that economic activities continue to expand at a solid pace. Unemployment rate has stabilized at a low level in recent months, and labor market conditions remain solid. Inflation remains somewhat elevated. The committee seeks to achieve maximum employment inflation at the rate of 2% over the longer run. Uncertainty around the economic outlook has increased. The committee is attentive to the risks to both sides of its dual mandate. So that's why we saw a stock market increase after the massive decrease given the tariff uncertainty the last couple of days. With respect to what the Fed is seeing in terms of monetary policy, the committee will continue to monitor implications of incoming information for the economic outlook. The committee would be prepared to adjust the stance of monetary policy as appropriate if risks emerge that could impede the attainment of the committee's goals. The committee's assessments will take into account a wide range of information, including readings on labor market conditions, inflation pressures, and inflation expectations, and financial and international developments. All that to say, the buzzword from our lovely Fed chair this last FOMC meeting was uncertainty, which, if I
Ooh.
remember correctly, was quoted over 60 times. I think it's actually closer to the 70s, but yeah, what that means is there's still a lot of unknowns. However, macroeconomic data at this moment lends us to believe that things are not as bad as the stock market is attempting to indicate at this
So let me
time.
ask 2 quick questions then. What do people want to know? If a trade war continues, how will that affect us? And when will the price of eggs go down?
Price of eggs is already falling as we're seeing more chickens become available within the United States. That's more a function of the fact that the bird flu is not as prevalent for the USDA's required, I don't know how to put this politically correctly, but killings, right?
They're
Where you're
not
Okay.
killing
required to,
chickens for avian flu anymore.
yeah.
Okay.
Um, so that's one. What was your other question? It was with respect to what do
Tariffs
people want
are
to
should
know?
we be afraid of the tariffs or
Uh, Not necessarily. So it depends, right? So tariffs, and a lot of people get this wrong, where they just think that prices, regardless of, are already parsed to consumers, regardless of what's occurring. Generally speaking, a tariff is paid by an importer, full stop. Whether or not they attribute that additional cost to the end item consumer depends upon the implications of the product, where it's being imported, where it's exported, and how it's being sold. So the net effect of that is not able to be encompassed nor read, right? Is what that means. So anybody who says automatically everybody's prices are going through the roof, you don't know that definitively, right? Is what that means.
yeah.
Having said that, the president has made certain that he absolutely wants to start reshoring and onshoring production capacity here in the United States, and that would not enable globalization with respect to cost cutting parameters for a cost of labor.
Awesome. Appreciate it. CK, any thoughts?
No, I don't. I think BG hit everything. I could not add to that and make it better.
All right, then. Fair enough. Well, that was our last topic. So, CK, I'll turn it over to you then for your final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I know BG and I were discussing JFK file release.
Yes,
Ooh.
yes. Very
A
interesting.
lot of nothing burgers, but there was some interesting stuff. I think you were talking about anytime. I mean, George H.W. Bush is, was recorded. Where was he the day JFK was assassinated? And his official answer was, "I don't remember,"
Yep,
which is a ridiculous answer. First
that's
of all,
terrifying.
but
Yeah,
what did the files reveal? Where was he actually? Dallas, Texas,
Dallas. Yep, he was there.
as the head of the CIA.
Hmm.
Was he the head then?
I'd have to check my my fact checks for
Former head
history,
of the CIA. I don't know if he was the head of the CIA at that time, but
but he was definitely involved in the CIA. Yes,
yes,
yes.
and involved in other stuff.
That's wild.
Tinfoil hat, probably.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I guess Trump is following through on releasing at least that aspect because he didn't do anything for the Epstein files. That was a big nothing burger as well. So at least we're seeing some progress. And I wonder if the backlash of the Epstein files really pushed him to release this, or at least the amount of information he did for this. But awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys both for being here. And Turnips, thank you for listening. As you know, this world is absolutely crazy. There's no shortage of information or crazy events going on, which is why I think we hit a new all-time length in this podcast, at least 44, 45 minutes. So super stoked about that. But as always, thank you for listening. Thank you to the 150 committed listeners. I think the more I talk about it, the more I want to make it happen, to get t-shirts, to get hats, to get a sticker to throw on your laptop. We have to do something that says Daily Turn Up 150 because you are the core of the show and the reason why we continue to do this episode. If only our parents listened to this, I don't think I could go on. It is way too much effort. But for the 150, we do it
Love you,
for
Mom.
you. Yes and no, parents, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. But
Thank you, Mom.
as always, please like, share, subscribe, tell everyone you know to check out this podcast. We try to be unbiased at times. We do our best.
Most
But
of
thank
the
you so
time.
much for most of the time. But thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.